Start streaming. Okay, it's started. All right. So we're off. Okay, let's see if that's the case. Let's see if I'm live. Come on. Oh, Gordon. No, that's not it. Good. Okay, I am live. All right. So where is that? Don't know. Okay. Anyways, let me kill the sound on this thing so I don't bugger things up. Today I just want to talk about a couple observatories, and I just want to show this one for this one first. This is the Algonquin Radio Observatory. It's located in I don't think it's a national park, I think it's a provincial park, Algonquin Provincial Park, I can't be sure, I can't remember. But anyways, it's a large piece of area in basically mid-northern Ontario, and very remote, extremely remote. You can see the roads around here, there's very few main roads. What roads there are to go into the park itself are actually logging roads. There used to be a very big logging area. And here's the Ottawa River running along here, or the Petawa. Yeah, the Ottawa River runs along here, goes through Ottawa itself. Pembroke, Deep River is where they built the first test sites for, what the hell was it for? Nuclear reactors and stuff like that. They did it there simply because Germans couldn't get to the place without being noticed if they were spies, because it was such a small town. Anyways, and you can get to the observatory several different gates, but it is extremely dangerous in the wintertime getting in there because it's logging roads, dirt, gravel. There's still logging trucks on it, oversized vehicles that could run you off the road. More importantly, there's snow and wildlife. And I recall at one point I actually wiped out coming down a steep hill. It was quite slippery, and I just lost control and started doing donuts down the hill. Fortunately for me, the snow was so piled up on the sides that I didn't go off into the ditch, and I was able to carry on driving to the observatory and made it safely. Interestingly, when you go to this observatory, you arrive at Algonquin Park gate, you have to phone ahead from there and tell the observatory staff that you're at the gate and you're about to enter, because if they don't see you in 3 hours or 2.5 hours, whatever, they send out a search party for you. Because it means you broke down or are in a ditch, worse, right? Or run over by a logging truck. So they will come looking for you. Now, luckily for me, the times I've gone there, I've never run into a logging truck, never had any problems. I did have moose run alongside me while I was driving, kind of entertaining. But as I said, I wiped out only once, the very first time going in. And by the way, it was the very first time I was actually driving a vehicle by myself. I had just gotten my driver's license. I had this firm belief that I would never drive. And I didn't get my license until I was 21 years old or 22. And the first time I drove a vehicle was literally driving to this observatory in the wintertime, and I drove through a snowstorm. Not a full-on blizzard, but a snowstorm all the same, which made visibility very hard. You could barely see the road, especially the country roads. Very, very difficult. But this was the very first time I'd ever gone to an observatory of any kind, optical, radio, what have you. And it was the first time I ever used an observatory, okay? More importantly, I'd never even looked through a telescope until this point. So not even, recreationally, some little 2-inch or something like that. I had never done that, never in my life. And I was in grad school when I first got a chance to go to this observatory. So, just kind of interesting. Anyways, this was the first one. This is Algonquin Park, and you can see here's Kingston, where Queen's University is, on Lake Ontario. Let me see if I can make it a little smaller. Here's Lake Ontario. So if you see the whole of the province, you get an idea. Here's Ottawa, Kingston, Toronto, in this area here. And I grew up down here. So I grew up in a little village in southwestern Ontario on Lake Huron. And I can still remember the day my dad and my brother drove me and dropped me off in Kingston, just drove away. And that was the last time I saw him for about 2 years. Anyways, so this is Kingston, and you had to drive through really, and these roads are just normal back roads. Like, they're tarred, but they're just 2-lane roads. They're not freeways. They're nothing like this. Not like the 401 or something like this. But, and this map, obviously, they've been improved substantially. But remember, I went to this observatory for the first time in 1985. So 1985, I go to this observatory. Anyway, so here we are at the observatory. Wait, so let's get this thing down here. Here's the observatory. Let's go take a look at it for a second. There's what the telescope looks like. It's still in use. It's still being used. But I can say this to you, that the telescope is no longer government funded. It's actually been handed over to a private group that run it literally almost like a bed and breakfast, which is just horrifying. They still rent it out to people that want to observe. So if you're doing VLBI, I think it has SNX receivers on it. It's a 42-meter, fully steerable alt-azimuth telescope. So basically, it can track objects at the polar source and stuff like this. It's designed for it. Anyways, this telescope is, as I said, 42 meters, and it's fairly remote. There is literally no one there. It's being used now probably for some VLBI, possibly geodesy or something like that. But I also know students from Toronto, U of T, and York will go there for teaching and training purposes. And a lot of people that use this thing don't understand that it can still do cutting-edge science. And yet it does not. I don't hear about Algonquin Park. I certainly have never seen anybody doing masers research with it. And it's probably because the facilities itself, you'd have to upgrade the receivers to do it. If it only has SNX operational, when I was there, I could do water masers, and I did do water masers. Mostly I did continuum, by the way. So it wasn't really, I wasn't doing spectroscopy at the time, but I did a little. And there was they had not yet discovered the 2 methanol lines. This is 1985, right? And I graduated in 1990, so they hadn't yet published the discovery of the new methanol lines. So this observatory, once upon a time, they used to search for such lines, for all these exotic molecules. And I remember at my PhD defense, one of the professors who was visiting, or rather wanted to attend, but he hadn't, he came up to me later and said, we used to use Hartrail, or Algonquin Park, for observing, and we thought about doing methanol lines, but we never did in the end. And it's kind of interesting, had they done it in the 1970s, they would have discovered all these incredibly bright sources. Certainly as bright as a lot of them, the water masers that aren't going through flaring. And it would have changed the way it would have changed the complexion of astronomy, and it would have changed the direction of research at this observatory. So it's kind of interesting, those kinds of things happen. Come on. Okay. So that's kind of where it was, and that's Algonquin Park. But that's not the observatory I really want to talk about. I'm going to go to, this is, again, the first one, the first telescope I ever actually saw. Never mind even looking through little tiny opticals. I never did any of that. Close I would have done would have been binoculars. But let me take you to, let me see if I can get rid of all of this. Ooh, okay, there's hard to pierce hook. Come on. I get annoyed. I get annoyed too hard, too quickly. Radio Astronomy Observatory. Okay, let's go there. It should take us somewhere, and it will. So let's get rid of Algonquin. Oh my God. I don't even know what the hell that is. So what the hell that is, I have no idea. Why would it go there? Don't know. Get rid of Ontario. That's probably the killer. RSA. There's probably found it. Search, go. And I'm just using Google Earth here. So, and this is the interesting thing. We never had these kind of tools at our disposal. In the 1980s, this did not exist. We did not have this. This is Hartrail. So this is Hartrail, South Africa. It's about 80 kilometers north of Pretoria. Okay, you can see a lot of things here. I'm going to first zoom out. Okay, and I'm zooming out for a reason. When I arrived in South Africa on the 28th of January, 1991, I literally got into the airport in Montreal. It was minus 35 Celsius, and I had a coat. because it was minus 35 Celsius and I wasn't stupid. And I just said to my buddy, I don't think I need this. And I just threw my coat back to him, and he just dropped me off at the airport because we drove from Kingston to Montreal, 2-hour drive. And then I just said, here, you can have this. I didn't need it. So I didn't want to carry the coat with me, so I just gave it to him and got on the plane and arrived in South Africa 24 hours later, and it was 30 above. So I went through a 65-degree temperature change and culture change like I've never seen before, flying from Montreal to South Africa on the 28th of January, 1991. Sorry, I'm getting all confused here. Anyways, the next day, I got picked up by the administrator from the observatory because he lived nearest to me, and we had these pool cars. And I remember driving along this road, and I remember seeing people walking, and like literally they were wearing like toques and gloves. And I'm like, this is like 7 in the morning, and I'm like I'm sweating, because I had to wear pants. I thought I had to wear pants, so I was wearing pants, and I freaking hate pants. I don't wear pants. I normally would just wear my rugby shorts. Anyways, so I wear pants that day because I figured I better look respectable on my first day. And I'm driving along, and people are wearing really like wool sweaters and stuff like this. I was going to swear, but I'll try not to. And I was like, what the hell? It's like 25 Celsius. I couldn't believe it. These people were freezing. But of course, you learn later that some of these dudes have been walking since 5 in the morning. So, to get to wherever they're going, because they couldn't afford to take a taxi or the various conveyances that were available to them. They just couldn't afford it. So they had to walk. They had to walk from A to B, and A to B was a pretty big distance. So they would start walking at 4 or 5 in the morning when the temperature was probably 5 or 10 degrees Celsius, and for them, that was freaking cold. That was my first impression of South Africa, to be honest with you. The second was when I came around, you can see this long road going here. So you go from, at the top of the road, it's 1,500 meters. I think that's what it says. It's about 1,500 meters, yeah. And at the bottom, it's 1,380. So you go down about 150 meters in altitude. And when you it's a pretty relatively steep road. It's about 3 Ks long. It's a hell of a road to run up, I can assure you. Anyways, and you come around this bend here. When you come around that bend, you notice the observatory. And that's the first time I saw the observatory, on the 29th of January, 1991. And it was like falling in love. It was just like, I get to work here. And I get this view of this beautiful, beautiful telescope. So let's zoom in, see what it looks like. See, so there's the telescope there. And where's north? North is basically this way. This is north, okay? And so it's facing what looks like east probably, or southeast rather. So it's looking at the galactic source of some kind. Anyways, but the point is the telescope was pointing kind of north when I came down the hill. And I just saw this beautiful image of the observatory. And it was like I said, it was like I was in heaven. Just like I was in heaven. Let's turn off this stinking phone. It drives me nuts. So most of this other stuff was not there. I keep using my hands, but this was not here. This is the prototype for Hyrax. That was their test instrument. This is the 15-meter that was built by the SKA people as a proof of concept for building a single mold non-metal telescope. Okay, and over here is Vigos, which is a very fast geodetic telescope designed to travel very quickly to look at sources with very minimal amount of time between observing. The slew rate of this telescope is like a degree a second, whereas this thing is 12 degrees a second. So it really could hurt you if it hit you. And this is another little telescope no one uses, but it's a 7.6 meter that we wanted to do it for teaching and training. But people just haven't got around to it. Anyways, and then here we have the LSR. So we have the lunar laser ranging station by the Americans, NASA, and then we have the Russian one here. Now these two groups of people, the people from South Africa that work at them, they communicate with each other. The actual researchers do not. Just kind of entertaining. And I believe the Chinese want to put one here somewhere as well. This building here is a lunar laser ranging system. So satellite laser ranging, lunar laser ranging. And Hartreo And here's their seismometer. It's got all sorts of. It's got a, what the heck is it called? For measuring earthquakes. That all fits. That's all situated here in a bunker. But the point is, the observatory when I first arrived had none of this stuff. It was just this big open field with the generator here. This is the gen building and it provided power for both our station and the guys up the hill. So you can see here, this is SANZA. So they basically do the satellite tracking systems. It used to be called SAC, Satellite Application Center or something like that. And we shared a common switchboard and we shared the generator, but we didn't do any interaction with each other, at least not when I was there, not in the early 80s. So they really didn't know who you were. So if somebody was to call for me, which they would do, someone would say, I remember, so it was funny. I never told people my last name, so because I find it's an insult to call me by my last name. And when I first arrived at Hartreo, they called each other by their surnames: Gaylord, Flanagan, Smits, Nicholson. And I hated it. Let me plug my computer in. I hated it. It was annoying. And the reason I hated it, let me be clear. I hated it because when I was a kid, I come from a family of 14 children. So when we were kids, every time we got into trouble in our little town of, at the time, 300 people, of which I was related to 60 of those people, every time we got into trouble, they would just say, oh, it's one of those McLeods did it. And it was so annoying. So you always got called, hey, McLeod. You never got called by your first name. You always got labeled, lumbered. And it was just damned annoying. So it was an insult to me, and literally fighting words in our family to be called McLeod. And I mean that literally, it's fighting words. So it's kind of interesting that my surname was a swear word to me. I was quite proud of who I am, but it was a swear word when somebody else used it. Let me say it like that. So when I first arrived, they were calling each other by their surnames. And I was like, no. And I remember I met Mike Gaylord at the time, and he and I were he became my sort of supervisor for my postdoc. And he and I became very close collaborators on a lot of the spectroscopy, and we exchanged PhDs and all this kind of business. But basically, they were trying to call me McLeod, and I go, don't ever call me that. Just call me Gordon. Just Gordon, that's fine. And so, and no one ever did, and I never told anybody. So when I was playing rugby in South Africa, I'd tell the rugby dudes or my friends. I would live with in communes and whatnot all around Johannesburg, or the women I dated, a bunch of girls. Let me not go into any details, but the upshot of the story is I would just tell them my first name, and I would give them the observatory number. We didn't have cell phones back then, and they would get the switchboard, which was up the hill. This is the whole point of this stupid story. So someone would call in and they'd say, hi, can I speak to Gordon, please? And the woman at the switchboard, who did not know me for a bar of soap, I can still remember this, says, in fact, I was trying to move into a commune with my really good friend Paul Allen and his sister, and they're from a small family of 8 children. They never believed me when I said I was from 14. So the sister calls me up and she's saying, look, she wants to tell me I can move in. So she calls, says, can I speak to Gordon, please? I says, well, Gordon who? Because they don't have surnames. They just have G. McLeod or something like that. And they'd never met me. So anyways, long story cut very short, she says, I don't know. I don't have a surname. He's a Canadian. Oh, you mean Dr. McLeod? And she goes, no, he's not a doctor. Because she just has this image of me showing up in an old pickup truck wearing rugby shorts and a muscle shirt, sweating, and that's how she first met me. And she couldn't imagine for the life of herself and even her brother when they were meeting with me, they had no idea what I did for a living because I never told them. I just said I'm looking for a place. They just assumed I was some sort of technician type person, whatever. And that was the end of it. And they go, no, he's not a doctor. Well, that's the only Gordon we have here. And we'll just put you through and you decide. And of course, they put it down to me, and I'm in the library or in the probably on a computer in the library doing data analysis. And I just said, I picked up the phone, and they said, hi, is this Gordon? I go, yes. And anyways, the woman says, well, we'd like to invite you to move in. Great. I said, no problem, thanks, I'll see you tonight, whatever. And I hung up. She calls her brother, Paul, and starts shouting, he's a doctor. Fuck's sakes. I have no idea. I don't remember what happened when I met her after that. Like, obviously, when I moved in, we would have spoken. And I don't remember having any discussion or any conversation about it. But it was just one of those weird experiences. So, I mean, I remember being in a bar one time, and there was a woman who said she could tell us, what was it? She could tell us what we did for a living. She could guess what we did for a living. That's what it was. And I'm sitting there, and so, of course, there's my buddy Paul, who's an accountant, my friend, his brother Kevin, who's a social scientist, and myself. And so, of course, Kevin worked in the government, and Paul was an accountant in a business, and myself. Anyways, she says, okay, you're an accountant. And Paul goes, hey, that's pretty good, And so, okay. And then goes to Paul, says, you look like some kind of government worker. So she was 2 for 2. And then she comes to me, and she looks at me, and she says, you're construction. And I laughed. I killed myself. I said, yeah, that's right, because I grew up in construction. So, of course, I didn't look like the stereotypical astronomer, I guess. I only wear glasses for reading. But I didn't, I guess it just didn't look the part. And it's not something you would think of. I mean, who in their right mind have ever met an astronomer, except for other astronomers? Really. And you go to university, you might be in the physics department, you'll run into some. Anywhere else in the university, you won't run into any. Okay? In a school of 30,000, you'll have 10. Right? So you don't get noticed. Anyways, so that was sort of my introduction to the culture of South Africa and also the observatory itself. But I got to tell you, I fell in love with this observatory. Really, I did. Absolutely. And as I said, it did not have all these extra things. Okay? So let's just zoom in on the telescope itself. You can see it here, and it's sort of facing us, which is great because you can kind of see just the surface and the subreflector and whatnot. And you can actually climb to the very top of the subreflector when it's at zenith, and it's pointing straight up. And there's some spots. Let me see if I can go live. I'll try to go live. Okay, here it is. Yeah. It's presently 8:34 in the evening in South Africa right now. I can see the moon. You can see spotlights, of course. And here is the structure of the telescope. That's the north leg there, and there's a ladder that runs up it. And then you climb through the structure, and then you can get onto, and it's updating. Hold on. Okay, it's moved. So telescope is operational, just so you know. So here you climb up the ladder. And by the way, I can tell that means the telescope is probably doing geodesy right now. And why, you might ask, how would I know that? It's because this thing updates every 45 seconds, and the only reason the telescope would move in 45 seconds is because it's likely trying to look at lots of sources. So it moves around the sky a lot, just so you know. So in 30 seconds, it might update again, and if it's moved again, if it moves in another minute, I'll know for sure that's the case. Because most astronomy we observe for longer than a minute. We're at one source for tens of minutes. Okay? So that's the difference. Anyway, so you walk up the infrastructure, and then there's a ladder that goes up here, right here, goes up the telescope. And it's a vertical ladder when it's straight up. And you're at about 50 feet when you're at the bearing. See, okay, so it's still sitting at the same spot. So anyways, it'll move in the next one probably. Anyways, and you're at about 50 feet. And then you got to walk up a vertical ladder which looks straight down to the ground, because you have to step across a gap which is about 1 meter across from the places where you can stand in the infrastructure. And then you have to walk straight up. And to convince people to get up this ladder here is hard. If you're afraid of heights, this is a ladder that's hard for you to climb. But when you get to that gap here, it's impossible for people to cross it. It just is. There are certain people that will not go beyond that one point. Now me, I loved being in the infrastructure. I like being in the back structure. So I would literally stand on this ledge here looking down, and I would go sit at the very top here and let the wind move me around when it's at zenith. And you'd stand there and you could surf. You could actually surf at the top. okay? But you had to go up here to go into the cone where the telescope, let's see if it's moved. It's still there. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we just got lucky. Maybe it is doing maybe it is doing astronomy, not geodesy. I could be wrong. Okay. And other funny things is they got these two places here where you can stand and do measurements on the bearings, because you have to give it, you want to grease the bearings, all sorts of funny things. So they did the welding here, and I remember when my buddy Howard Pelajaman, he was the head mechanic and the workshop manager at the time. He actually installed this one here while I first started there. I think it's in '92. Anyways, he went up there, did all the welding. He says, Gordon, come on up with me. So, of course, I'm at my desk, and he drags me out of my office, and we wander up the telescope, go up the ladder, up this structure. We wander across here, and we climb up onto this spot here. He says, Gordon, go out there and stand at the end of the step, or the stand, and jump up and down as hard as you can. And I'm going, what for? He says, just do it. Anyway, so I'm up there jumping like a madman, jumping up and down. He says, oh, good, the welding held. Because he hadn't tested the weld yet, and he wanted someone that was heavier. So there he is. And I'm like going, you mean to say if it had broken, I would be down on the ground? Yeah. But it wouldn't have broke like that, so it wasn't as bad as that. We weren't tied off. We didn't have safety harnesses back then. There were safety harnesses when you were putting on the dichroic, which is a system that fits between the subreflector and the receivers that are in the cone that sit on the dish. Now, you had to sort of tie you off, but most of us just didn't bother because it's too annoying. You're always climbing around, the damn thing's in your way. So we just said to hell with that. We'd go up there and we'd slap the thing on, rotate it. And you're only 15 feet off the dish. How far are you going to fall? So, and of course, I hated safety measures with a passion. No, it's still at the same spot. That tells me I was wrong. It's basically doing astronomy, not geodesy. So, sorry, I was incorrect because it would have moved by now. Anyways, so my point I'm trying to get to is once you get up this ladder and you have somebody that's so afraid to go beyond this point. I had a girlfriend and I was trying to cajole her to go up the ladder. And so we could climb up onto the dish and get a really good look in into the receiver cabin, which is up here on the cone, in the cone. And I got to tell you, that was a serious effort to get her to go up that vertical ladder without freezing. Because you're just looking, like I said, as soon as you look down, it just paralyzes people. And I'm not going to go into any detail as to why I'm going to stop. I'm just going to stop the story right there, leave it to your own imagination. I'm not going to say any more. Anyways, but it was really difficult. There are lots of things. And I remember one time, let's see if I can show you a better. Let's go back to the other. Here, I remember there was monkeys climbing on here. And the problem with monkeys is that they will tear and chew on the wiring. So you have to shoo them away. So I ended up having to get sent up, and I was on the top on the subreflector, trying to run around it, literally hanging on like a monkey myself, scaring off these little vervid monkeys. Anyways, luckily they weren't baboons, because those things are much more aggressive and will hurt you. So yeah, so this is Hart Trail. This is a nice view of Hart Trail. As I said, there's the Vigos dish here. If I go to the, and I want to show you something else while I'm there, but let me go back to this picture. Where is it again? Where is it? What? There it is. Sorry. I want to go to this picture here again. What do I want to show you here? What was I about? No, sorry. I want to go to the Vigos. So here's the Vigos camera. And at daytime, if you go onto this website, and here it is here, you just go to www.hartrail.ac.za/xxVGS_liveview.php, and with that you will go to this image. Here's the Vigos telescope sitting at zenith. It's not operating at this time. They're basically just testing it. It's been there for 10 years, but they've now built the receiver, and they're now starting to do testing, pointing testing, etc. This thing can really move. You can already see some of the wear on it. It used to be perfectly painted white and blah, blah, blah. But There it is. And of course, if you watch at night, every now and then you'll see baboons come in here, or some kind of animals, wild animals will come along. In particular, you'll get leopards. So in some of these pictures, you might get lucky and see a leopard. And kind of interesting. So there are leopards in these hills. The hills itself are very old. I mean, they're very worn down. So, yeah, so if you get lucky, you might see a leopard just wandering around in the image, right? Just kind of cool. So this is Hartrail, but what I want to show you is, as you can look at it here, when you sort of zoom out a bit, you see a lot of other things. So this is a little school that was there. It was built by Nassau for the village, the workers. This village was built for the workers. So anybody that worked at Hartrail, whether they were guards, ground staff, technicians, whatever, they could get housing and live right on site, and they would then send their kids to this little rural school. Now, the school was so well taken care of because it had support from technicians and scientists and engineers and such, that parents would send their kids to school. And I'm talking I think all the kids were black kids, but it was one of the best laid out schools in South Africa. It was the first rural school in South Africa to have the internet, to give you an idea. It was one of the first schools to have computers and computer classes, rural schools. So unfortunately, they turned it down. They turned it down. They closed it. Now I'm going to zoom out a bit. And the reason I'm telling you this story is that along this road, because this is the road we take, we would come to Hartrail, and into this valley here, there's a long, long road, goes deep down into the valley. Let's see what we got here. Up here, it's 15.4, and down here, it's down about 100 meters. And it's quite steep going into this valley and up. But you can really get the car up to high speed, even these vehicles that we had, these old Fords. And so we used to pick up lots and lots and lots of kids along this road. Like when we turned off right there used to be about 10 or 15 or 20 kids would be waiting to catch rides to the school. And so, of course, we would pack kids into our car. These little kids, they're in, grade 1, grade 2, and we'd have like 10 kids in the back seat, myself and Dirk Smits or somebody. And then we'd drive like bastards. We get to this hill, and you got this long downgrade, which you can get up to hell of a good speed. So we're getting up to close to 180 k's an hour, and these cars were probably not rated for it. And it was very dangerous, of course, but we did it anyways. And the kids loved it, scared. I mean, they were up there, and you could hear them talking in they were Tswanan, so they were speaking in Tswana. And they were speaking, and then every now and then you could hear them say, 140, and because they would just they were getting so excited about how fast they were going. It was just great. So it was like we gave them like a roller coaster ride to work. And of course, then you come to Hartrail itself, and you turn in, and you drive down this long stretch here. But of course, you don't want to go down this road too fast. It's too winding, and quite honestly, people have died on this road. So it's one of those places you have to be a little bit more careful. What I can show you in this site as well is that what else exists in this area. So here's Hart. There's Sansa, which tracks satellites, stuff like that. And then, of course, if you zoom in here, you will find something else interesting. These are Earth stations. This is the post office site. And you see here 3 well-kept 32 meter telescopes. So beside Hartrail are 3 32-meter telescopes and an incredible set of laboratories and whatnot, all for the post office. This was for telecommunications when they would do downlinks, satellite downlinks, stuff like that before the internet into Africa. They used this to get the internet into Africa and telecoms. And then, of course, you see these 2 18 meters here, and then you have 2, I think these are 12 meters, this is a 9 meter, and these are 7 meters or something like that. And all of these telescopes to this day are they're well kept, but these ones in particular are not really used. They're not really used at all. So if you were to beam form these 3 telescopes and look at the same source, you'd have an effective surface area of a 54-meter telescope. So our goal was always to go over there. So while I was in the government, we started talking to the people that control this, which is the government. Of course, it's a post office, it's telecom, basically the government telecommunications network for the country. and they were going to give us one of these dishes here. So we were going to convert one of these for doing astronomy with it, and then do like a baseline, et cetera, and stuff like that. But really, I actually, at the one meeting with Telcom, I said, well, would you not be willing to give us one of the larger ones? Because, of course, if you can get one, you might as well ask for two, right? Anyways, you don't ask, you don't get. It's just something I learned from an ex-girlfriend. Don't ask, don't get. And so these three telescopes are in very good condition. You can see them here. The facilities itself are well kept. It is designed for research, and they three can be converted to do radio astronomy. So if Hartrail's bearings fail, let me just see if I can go back across. You just see how close they are. That's how close they are, just so you know. So this is 3 32 meters, 2 18 meters, and there's a 26 meter over here. So this was built first. These were built in the 70s. Okay, and there's some other stuff up the hill, which they do for downlink stations. So these are Earth stations. So we have tracking stations over here for satellites. We have communications antennas here for the country, which are underutilized now as a result of the fiber that goes through the country, comes down along the coast of Africa. And so those telescopes, like all the others throughout Africa, like Ghana for that matter, are now redundant and can be used for astronomy. So given the right person, the right amount of money, if the government was wise, they could invest and take this over and convert it to do radio astronomy. You could be doing world-class science, 3 dishes, and then you have a 3-kilometer baseline to your 4th dish. So you'd have a hell of a good high sensitivity single baseline. And if you included antennas up here that are 20 meters, you could have a small network. I used to call it heart attack. So that was my description of it, a heart attack. And the reason was simple. The people at Cape Town hated Hartrail. Hated Hartrail. They still to this day, they dislike it. They undervalue it, they hate it. They don't see the value of Hartrail at all, and they want to discontinue funding for it, and they use it for the most minimalist ways. And this is my political speak coming on. And one of the reasons why I left Hartrail was because they eventually merged with SKA office in Cape Town to form Sorau. All well and good, something I had proposed and was fully supportive of and still am to this day. But the way they did it made Hartrail completely insignificant. And that was the part that I thought was just criminal, because they effectively made it simply a dish, not a research center of any kind. And in fact, now they're not willing to have scientists at the site. So basically, the scientists who are there, as they retire or quit like I did, you're going to find my contract ran out. So I just refused to renew it. I didn't quit. I just didn't try to renew it. So you're going to find that there will be no research being done here anymore. It'll simply be a tape-changing facility. They'll do VLBI, they'll do monitoring because the programs are in place, but only until somebody decides they're not interested in maintaining the equipment. And Hartrail will die a very slow death as a result. And that may sound, people say, oh yeah, but that happens. It happened in Greenbank, etc. like that. That's true, I understand that. But considering it is really the only VLBI station in Africa still functioning or is functioning, you'd think you'd take greater care, because it provides all of the geodesy. This facility really, its value is not astronomy, although I like to think it is. It's geodesy. And my buddy who brought me back in 2015, Ludwig Kombrink, he literally got so sick as a result of the back and forth when they were merging the two facilities. It put him in the hospital. And the day they were supposed to meet to finalize a lot of the details, the guy had to he literally was pulling drips out of him, and got up, got dressed, and drove across Pretoria to have a meeting. And because he was being told he had to go there by himself, he shows up, and there's literally 10 people from the SK sitting there, engineers, administrators and engineers, a bunch of people from government, and then Ludwig by himself. So clearly the impression was made that the facility is unimportant. It's just being absorbed by the SK project because it's so much bigger. Anyways, this is the politics that actually led me to leave South Africa. I just didn't want it anymore. I just wanted to do astronomy. I just like this. I mean, this observatory is literally a girlfriend to me. I treat it as such. And I didn't want to leave it. And I remember when George, he goes back to all the time, George Nicholson, the first director, he was the same way. He treated this like, it was like his second love, second only to his wife and his kids, of course. But the point is, he absolutely loved it there. He had a passion for the place. And as a result, science got done. VLBI experiments were set up. Programs were ensured that they were always being done and tested and so on and so forth. New observing was done, such as when Carl Menton discovered the methanol transition at 6.7 gigahertz. George came back from the IAU meeting where he first heard that, and he says, I think we can build a receiver to do this. And we realized that if we can do it before the Australians, we can get some serious publications out of it. And we were absolutely spot on. The Australians had started building their receiver afterwards, as did we, but they were in no hurry. They just assumed there was no competition in the southern skies. And Jim Caswell found out there was. And we were able to publish 2 or 3 papers before he got his first paper published regarding their observing in Australia. Now, make no mistake, I don't see it as a competition, but at the time we saw it as like an arms race, because it was all in good fun. Like, we just figured, hey, we could do this, we can do this, and we had the researchers in place that could do the research, we had the technicians in place who could build the receivers, and we had the support of our administrators. So the three components that make an observatory good, your technicians, your administrators, and your observers, your researchers, have to all come together. And that's why Algonquin Park is now treated like a bed and breakfast, because it never had those 3 working together. As an observatory, it eventually failed. It lost favor they moved towards JCMT, went to millimeter astronomy. Most of the students in Canada started to become millimeter astronomers, not radio astronomers, and they all started using JCMT because Canada had a portion of the observing time. The problem with their radio astronomy program was they just ignored it. So all the older receivers, such as my supervisor, Vic Hughes, died. John McLeod retired, no relation. He was the guy that taught me how to use Algonquin, by the way. Literally spells his name the same as mine. It's kind of entertaining. In fact, we were at the site the one time at Algonquin. When I was first there, it was myself, John McLeod, and Scotty McLeod. And no 3 of us were related. We each had the same surname, but we weren't related. It was quite funny. Scotty was a technician or an engineer, and John was the lead astronomer the lead science astronomer from Ottawa that would drive out regularly to the observatory. So politics led me to leave Hart Trail. I just didn't want to work with these people. If you're going to treat someone as kind and good as Ludwig, who was passionate about what he did, the way they did, and they treated him badly. I don't care what anybody says. They can say what they want. They treated him badly, to the point where he had to be put in a hospital. He had to be hospitalized. Now part of it's because, it's all about how you deal with pressure. The guy he just left, and he says, I'm done. I'm doing my thing. He retired. And now he's got a beautiful place on the East Coast, building a bed and breakfast. The guy's really hands-on. He's literally living off-grid. Built his own power supply, own water supply, everything. Absolutely amazing character. Anyways, and Ludwig, if you're listening, you did a good job. Don't kid yourself. You did a good job. You did the best you could under the circumstances. Don't let anybody say anything different. And so so going back to Hart, you really could imagine that this should be a goal, that Hart Trail would be moving towards, taking this and getting it up and running so that they could work together for the longest time possible, so that when Hart finally did fail, because it will, and it's going to cost something like 10 or 15 million rand, so that's about 15 million, that's about 1.5 million Canadian dollars or $1 million US to fix, that if they didn't have the money, they could just simply already be operating. Okay? But you don't have people with vision. You don't have people with vision that see no value in this. Why would they even care about this over here? They just see this as an outrigger from Meerkat, SKA in Cape Town, and they don't care about Gauteng and anything like that. And a lot of the astronomers in Cape Town kind of thought that way. I remember talking to the director of SAO once, and he said, Gordon, there's not really much outside of Cape Town, if you think about it. I was like, what? And of course, I was seriously anti-Cape Town. You know, anybody that knows me thinks I hate Cape Town. I don't hate Cape Town. I dislike the attitude when I first arrived, this "you're a foreigner" attitude. Not because I'm Canadian. It's because I'm not from Cape Town. If you're not born in Cape Town, if you arrive in Cape Town to work, it takes years to be accepted by the Cape Townians. So that kind of a mindset, and now it's changed. It's much more cosmopolitan now. Likewise, so is Johannesburg as well, obviously. But that has changed. But at the time, it wasn't. It did not. And they treated you like an outsider, and you felt like an outsider, and basically, you just never felt comfortable there. So I just didn't care. So Cape Town was not my favorite place, but the mindset of the divide between Cape Town astronomers and elsewhere, in this case Hartreo, is evident. They didn't care for the money being spent. They thought it could be better used putting it into SAO at the time, and then Sorau, stuff like that. In fact, when it was actually Patricia Whitelock, I believe, George Nicholson can put a comment in here, and he can tell me if I'm right or wrong. But I think George told me once it was Patricia Whitelock talking to Justin Jonas and made the comment, says, you guys should put in a bid to host the SKA, here in Africa. And Justin went and talked to people like probably George and whatnot, and then they approached the government, and then at the government there was a guy named, who was the director, the director general at the DST at the time, Rob Adam, who became the CEO. He took over for Bernie Fenneroff after Bernie retired. But Bernie and him were good friends, and Bernie was in the unions. And so Rob Adams said, hang on, my buddy, maybe we should get Bernie, because he's well positioned. He knows how the government works, because he was in the unions for years. He's a radio astronomer by training out of Oxford or Cambridge. And so he was perfect, and he really was the perfect guy. People could say again, I'm not going to use those expressions. But Bernie, he and I had some serious run and gun arguments, Bernie and I. But I got to tell you something. Kudos to the man. He was really, really, really the right person at the right time in the right place, because he had all the skills necessary to ensure that the system worked. He also understood the reason of having an arm's length organization in order to set up Meerkat, because if you're too close to NRF or all the apparatchiks of the government, they actually get their fingers involved, and it becomes painful. And it actually can slow down your process. And when it involved the bidding process, where we were competing against first China, I think the US, Canada, Argentina, Australia, and then it pared down to just the two, Australia, South Africa. Before it got to that, you don't want to have anything that's going to slow you down. And sometimes government just gets in the way. As they would always say, in South Africa, these people couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery. And the reason is because government isn't designed to run things. They're directors. They're not managers. They're directors. So they come up with ideas. They write white papers. They direct funding. They direct research. But they don't actually do any of it. And I was told that when we wanted to build a telescope in wherever the hell it was, the Ghana. It was in the end, it was Ghana. But I was told, Gordon, your job is simply to come up with the ideas. We hand it over. And we move on to the next project. And so I was out, and the SK was over. Now, Bernie took over that, and he did a good job. Now, Bernie and I had problems otherwise, because my job wasn't simply to protect the SKA and the bid. I felt my job was also to do what's right for the taxpayer of South Africa, which is all of them, and what's good for and best for all of them. So if you're investing billions of rands into a project like the Meerkat project, try to find a way that the money benefits the local farmers and workers, local communities. Do that. So as I said, here they are. This is what NASA did. So NASA built the road. They made it safe. The road used to go straight over the top and down. People died on that road. Okay, they wiped out at the bottom. They got killed. So they had to change the road. So they made it more contoured. They made this road. So it was much safer. Still dangerous, but safer. Okay, they built. You can see here at Hartreo. Let's go down and look. Let's look at Hartreo. So when they built Hartreo, they built an area for the groundskeeper. This is his offices here. They had accommodations for people on staff that were working. They had accommodations here for the night crew that would be working here. This building here was a cafeteria that housed and fed the 100+ workers that once worked here, this was a swimming pool. I mean, it wasn't a fire break, it was a swimming pool. So it was a recreation area. They had a cricket team here. Okay? They built a community for the grounds workers. They built a school for their children. This is what Nassau did. And so it benefited all those people from 1960, right? They poured the concrete for the pad, on December 25th, 1959? I think so. It was 59 or 60. I think it was 59. In 59, December 25th, 1959. Christmas Day, they poured concrete. On July 1st, in honor of Canada's birthday, the telescope was fully functional. No, it wasn't a solid surface back then, but it was fully functional. So inside of 6 months, they built a fully functional telescope with offices, school facilities for the local kids, recreational areas for the workers and staff, barbecue and so on. I mean, that's what you should do. That's the bare minimum of an observatory. And of course, the road, let me go back, let me make it smaller again. Let's see, these things make important sense here. So here's the road. You can see here it's paved, marked, all that stuff. There's a car going down it, right? Anyways, so let's go up the hill. Let's make it smaller still. Let's go up the hill. So there's a little community there that's now there. Here's the main road. Here is the main road. And the main road is paved. It's paved because Nassau paved it. Nassau paved it. I'll show you where they paved it from. Nassau paved the road from right there. They paved the road. They paved for the paving from one end to the other. And why did they do that? Because people were driving on gravel roads in the middle of the night, were having car accidents, some badly injured. So they just realized that the value to them was to pave, and of course the secondary value of a paved road is what? Oh, let me tell you, all the farmers in this area now had much better roads to get to market with their goods. All of the workers in this area now had a much better road to go along to feel safe when they're driving at night or walking at night. Okay? So, that's how you invest. That's sort of when you look at a project, a science project, you got to see it from the eyes of 4 different groups of people. Okay? And those 4 different groups are basically the scientists. They drive the prestige. The educators drive the teachers drive the education aspect, human capital development. The engineers drive the technology development and technology transfer. So all of this technology was being transferred into South Africa during apartheid, just so you know. And in the 1970s, when the United States divested, they pulled all of their stuff out and all of the equipment out. They decided to leave some of it. They wanted to move the actual telescope. So, that would have been uncool, would never have had a job there. For myself, my first postdoc, as I said, was here. So why did they leave it in the end? Because they recognized, even though it's apartheid and they're divested, they recognized that the South Africans had enough skills that they could they could keep this thing functioning. And they were 100% correct, and it paid off, and it paid off in a big way because it led to the creation of Hartrail, and it then ultimately leads on to Meerkat and now the SKA. So even though Hartrail had very little to play in the SKA, except for George assisting with Justin in the very early days to get Bernie started, after Bernie got started, they gave themselves a distance from Hartrail for various political reasons. And that led to other problems, okay? So back to my point, I had problems with Bernie, but it wasn't because he was the wrong guy. I had problems with Bernie because I had to look at this from the perspective of, should I be paving the roads? In other words, can I not help the farmers at the same time we're doing astronomy? Okay? Can I help the farmers? Can I make the lives better for all the people that live along this road? And there are hundreds, okay? And I can assure you, this is an incredibly dangerous road. I mean, I literally, and this is going to sound terrible, I literally killed 2 people on this road. Now, I didn't kill them here. Unfortunately, it was a car accident. I didn't kill them. Let me be clear. I did not kill them. It was a very bad car accident, and it happened basically happened even before that. Yeah. So it happened somewhere in here, on one of these corners, probably this bend here. Is that right? It's probably before that. Anyways, I can't remember exactly, but it was just before we got to the observatory. And unfortunately, two people wearing very dark clothing were standing in the middle of the road, and there was traffic coming, and I had to hammer on the brakes. I couldn't get out of the way. And unfortunately, I tried to render assistance, was not able to save their lives. I couldn't even find one of the persons. And I was driving, the speed limit's 100 on this road, or 120 even, and I was driving 80 because it was pitch black, and there was people driving with their high beams on coming at me, so I slowed down, and I just couldn't see them coming around this blind corner. It was terrible, absolutely terrible. So this is an incredibly dangerous road. So my point is, back to what I'm saying about when you invest in astronomy, think of this community as who you want to help. And the more things you do that help this community, the more money they're willing to give you to do astronomy. It's not rocket science shit, and we're rocket scientists. Anyways, that's the story. So I had a serious issue with, I had lots of arguments with Bernie. Geez, I remember sitting in a meeting, I don't know what's going on, and he started calling me names. Like he's swearing at me. He was that mad at me. And I said, you call me whatever the hell you want. I don't care. And basically what I was trying to say is they wanted to build an airstrip or something like this. And I said, you can't build an airstrip because then what you're doing is you're circumventing the local community, and these people are investing money into the local community because they think they're going to make money from the visiting astronomers. So you build an airstrip and you circumvent the town but basically has invested with no return on it. So I said, this is crazy. What are you doing? Pave the road. Just pave the road and fix up the local airport. No. Anyways, so after I left the government, they, of course, built the airstrip like a bunch of tits. Jesus, useless. Anyways, but, I mean, these are people, remember, these are astronomers, engineers and scientists. They're not economists. They're not interested in looking at the economic value of the thing. What is the multiplier effect of investing $100,000 into a very rural communities like this? This is all farming. So the economic multiplier effect in that area here is probably 6. In Joburg, it'd be 4. In Cape Town, it's probably 5 or something like that, because it's slightly less developed than Johannesburg. But if you were developing Carnarvon, where the Meerkat telescope is, then you're basically having a multiplier factor of 8 or 10. So every dollar put in, you get $10 out. It's stupid. Just simple economics. And I'm not an economics major. I had an MBA. Anyways, this is Hart Trail. So getting away from all the politics of it all, this was really one of my first loves. I mean, I loved Algonquin Park. I really did. And they screwed it. I think it got screwed because there was no... Canada was moving away from it. But Hart Trail, to me, if this thing fails eventually, and it will, they'll be left with the 15-meter, which will also fail eventually. And likewise, Vigos will be all that's left. This will become a tape-changing facility with a handful of people working there. And all of this, the school is now closed because the local community the school boards did not want to use busing to send kids here. So they shut down the most advanced rural school in South Africa because they didn't want to pay. They didn't want to pay for busing. Back to economics, right? Back to economics. So you have a facility like this. It helps all the people in the area because NASA invested in their researchers, their technicians, their ground staff, everyone in their well-being, including building roads for the local farmers and that. And then we turn around and look at this and go, no, we don't want to waste any money doing that. We want to build fancy new schools. And then those schools are too far away for this facility to assist them with their computing systems and so on and so forth. Because even myself, I would go over here and I would help teach. So it was mostly my friends Claire and Don that did the teaching, but I also would go around occasionally too and also help. And its problem is, of course, my accent was so strong, most kids couldn't understand me. Now, I just want to point something out, a funny story that happened when literally my first day at Hart Trail. As I said, I didn't know anybody, and my office was this corner. This is the cafeteria right there. And my office is right beside it, right there. Okay, I shared it with Jonathan Quick, who's still there, who's basically running the place. He's the head of the VLBI program, extremely good at his job. And he's also the guy that ensures, he and Johan, or Fani rather, ensure that I get my observing done. Anyways, so we were sitting out here. There's a little patio area. And what we would do is we'd have coffee, they'd have coffee, I'd drink Coke. And I just went for a walk. I didn't know anybody, so I didn't know who to talk to. I just sort of went for a walk. And all of this did not exist. This was all treed. This was all treed. There's, well, barren here, but there's trees here. And this is all the trees have been cut down now for the laser ranging systems. And I just went for a walk along the fence line. And as I was walking up in this area here, Dawn and Claire are sitting at this is about, I don't know, maybe 100 yards, 100 meters, something like that. And Dawn and Claire are sitting talking, look, and Claire, they're making a joke. They're joking around going, oh, and look, this is the great hunter from Canada going through the African wilderness hunting. And as they were talking stupid like this back and forth, you know, of me being this great white hunter or something stupid, I found a rabbit, like a dead rabbit. And I picked it up by its hind legs and I hung it up. I held it up in the air to show them this big rabbit. And as they're saying, the great white hunter from Canada, as they're saying this shit, I picked up this giant rabbit, this hare, and then I flung it back into the bushes and walked off. It probably had gotten bitten by a snake. There's lots of black adders. Are they black adders? Not black adders. Puff adders. There's lots of poisonous snakes in this area. So wrinkles and stuff like this. So you have to be very careful when you walk around here that you don't step on a snake. And I did once too, by the way, so just so you know, it's dangerous. Luckily, I didn't get bit because it was very cold in the morning, and so it would just scurry off. It didn't have enough energy to do anything. So it just kept going. But yeah, that was the very first time I was there, and Claire and Dawn were absolutely astounded that I'd actually caught something. It was so funny. But the poor animal was already dead. So it wasn't like I caught, you know, you can understand. Anyways. And the other thing about this area, and this is the beautiful part, is all of this is farmland. This farm was bought from a dentist from Pretoria by Nassau, okay, 1956 or something stupid like that. And they were doing all sorts of funny things. And you can kind of see the borders of it here, and this is a mountain range. And at the top of this mountain range, I don't know if you can see it. Let's see if we can see it. Let's see if we can find it here. I don't know if I can. I probably can't find it. But there's posts, like you can see an old stone fort, not a stone fort, but a round circle of stone. I can't find it now. Maybe I don't know where the hell it is exactly. You can't, it's not obvious. Anyways, but you can wander around in this thing, and this used to be during the Boer War in the early 1901, 1902, 1903. All of the farmers, all the Boer farmers in this area were removed. They were put into concentration camps, and many of them died. Okay? So it's really got a very terrible history. Really, it does. And the place was completely, basically denuded of people during the Boer War. It was part of the British concentration camp system so that they could control the Boers, so they didn't want to have them getting food, so they just basically burned all the farmhouses and put all the wives and whatnot into concentration camps where a lot of them died. So there's lots of old little tiny farms, and I don't know if you can see any remnants of it. When you walk out and around in the bush, you probably can't, because they're really hard to see now. I don't know if you can see them. Yeah, you probably can't see it. You really can't see it anymore. But got these beautiful trails. Okay, just absolutely gorgeous trails. And you see lots of wildlife. Warthogs. What's this? That's probably nothing. That's something from Hart Rail. So that's not really, no, I won't use that. No, that's the end of the road. So that's not it. Anyways, and so they have warthogs, and they have Gemsbok, and they have the actual hartebeest, which is an actual animal. And they're in this area, and you see them occasionally. You don't see any giraffe. You don't see the leopards because they just stay away from humans, obviously, because when I first arrived, someone shot one, if you could imagine, bastards. It just looks like a graveyard. This might be the graveyard here. I can't tell. Anyways, it's beautiful, just absolutely gorgeous, stunning property. And you can walk around for hours you can run into these old buildings, old history. And then, of course, you have the wildlife there, lots of birds, and so on. Absolutely gorgeous. And in fact, where is it now? Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this kind of, it's probably, okay, whatever. It's really hard to tell some of the stuff. Well, that's not it. What am I doing? I'm in the wrong spot. It's probably this area, not here, but there's areas here where basically if it rains once every 10 or 20 or 30 years, it actually floods. Like something like this area here probably. This is probably it here. And every so often it will flood and it'll actually create a little dam here. And there are little dams that the farmers had built to collect water. And we could go swimming. So I remember the first time, it was the only time in my lifetime that it was filled with water. And we just stripped down naked and jumped in, the three of us, myself, Dirk, and Ludwig. And we were swimming, Dirk Smits and Ludwig Kombrink and I. We were swimming around here stark naked at lunchtime. It was just great. It was just hilarious. Just the things you could do. It was just such a great place to be. And, I don't know what people, it's like Greenbank. It's just gorgeous at Greenbank. I don't think people understand. When you're at a place like this, it's built for focusing your research because there's nothing else to do. You can go for wanders in the bush and everything else, but the reality is you had a library there, you had the internet there, you had everything you needed to do good science, and you did good science. So the people that were there did good science. That's the way it was. I loved it. I used to be out here six days a week. Only Saturdays I wouldn't normally come because it was a rugby day. So when I'm playing rugby basically it's the summer months or it's the winter months, I would play rugby and I would never be on a Saturday. But Sundays I was always here, and then during the off season I would be here Saturday mornings. So I was here almost 7 days a week, and when I first arrived, I got up to, by 1992, I was involved in over 50% of the observing time at Hartrail. So, and okay, a lot of that was VLBI, but about half of that was mine. So I was getting about 2,000 hours a year of my own personal data, plus I was involved in 2,000 hours of other people's data. Just to give you an idea of how much observing I was able to do. It was even more than that, I got to tell you. It was over half, so it's about 5,000 hours, 4,500 to 5,000 hours that we were involved in. And then, of course, that became lower and lower as my postdoc came to an end. I did less, of course. Anyways, so this is Hartrail. This is really my first love, quite honestly. Just is. So if you ever get to South Africa and you want to drive, you want to go see an observatory, see this place. Okay? It's all paved roads. It's very easy to get to. Okay, they won't let you in unless it's a visitor's day. And that's another funny thing. Let me tell you that story too. I've been probably talking for too long here, but I'll tell it anyways. I used to help Marion do the monthly visitors center. We'd have a visit every Monday. So we'd have an open day, right? So people would come, they'd walk around the observatory, we would show them all sorts of things, and then we would have a night viewing. So we'd set up a 14-inch telescope here by the pool, outside by the pool. We'd turn off all the lights, and we'd set up the telescope, and then we would do night sky observing. Now, Marion did all of that stuff because she was very good with the telescope. I'm useless with an optical telescope. And Marion would do all the things like the planets for the kids, and she'd entertain them like that. I would just tell funny stories. So I would talk about all the stupid shit that happened at the observatory, like me chasing monkeys off a telescope or doing silly things on the never mind. We're not going to go into that detail. But all the crazy stories that happened, because there's lots, because it's an observatory, right? So in the NASA days, there were 100 plus people working here. In the astronomy days post-NASA, it probably went down to about 20, okay? And when I was there, I think we had a critical mass of 10 researchers, so plus the technicians and engineers. So we got up to about 20 people. Anyways, but so many interesting stories of stupid things that people did, like just stupid things, like I can't even give you examples of them right now, to be honest with you. But I would just talk about those sorts of things, and that's what people are entertained in. And so people would call in and they would book to go to this. So because we had a limited number of people we would take. I think it was 40. And they would call and they'd say, and they were told by others, get the Canadian guy. So I remember one time somebody says, Gordon, we got a request. They want the Canadian tour guide. So they wanted me to be a tour guide. Anyways, but I was doing it anyways. But I mean, to be called the tour guide when you're one of the researchers there is just kind of amusing. But we had great fun. And likewise, when the students would come and we would teach them, I would do a lot of that. I would actually take them for hikes out into the bush, because you want people to know the connection between nature, history, and where we are, what we're doing. And this area, this is called the cradle of humankind, this whole area, just so you know. This whole area, let me see if I zoom out a fair bit. This whole area in here is called the cradle of humankind. And it basically has where Sturfontein Cave is, and it has it has all sorts of caves here where they found the cradle of, here's the cradle of human, that's what they call it, the cradle of humankind. But basically they have Sturfontein Caves, they have all sorts of other spots, and then they have Pelindaba, where they built the nuclear bombs in South Africa. So you have the entire gamut. You go from ancient human through the nuclear age to the space age. Just to give you some idea of what you have in this one small area. So in a day, you can actually traverse all of those, and you can go to all of their all their touristy spots. You can go visit, and it's just kind of cool. So that is that. So that's Hart Trail in a nutshell. Let's see what Hart Trail looks like now before I let you go. Here's my camera. See if it's moved. Yes, it's looking at another spot. There, it's moved again. And now you can actually clearly see the cone. So here's the receiver cone. Here's the secondary mirror. The primary mirror is the big dish. Then we have a secondary which reflects the signals down into the receiver cone. And you have a cone outside, which is the 18-centimeter receiver for ground state OH. And all the other receivers, there's 6 of them inside here, going from 22 gigahertz down to in frequency down to 1.6 gigahertz in frequency. Okay. Anyways, and like I said, it's got elephant legs, all sorts of stuff. But when this is at zenith, you can literally stand up here where the light is, and you can surf, and you can walk up. You go up this ladder here. There's a ladder on this leg. You get up to there, and you can just park off up there and just catch some waves or catch some wind. It's pretty cool. I just love this place. I just like even looking at it. So I will tend to look at this because I want to see what the weather looks like for my observing. Every day I check the weather in the mornings. But I mean, for me, just looking at this place, it's like looking at my second home. Just is. I can just remember every step up this ladder here and standing on this thing here. I remember one experiment. We were doing polarization experiments. I was actually tethered inside the receiver cone while the telescope was moving. So while the telescope was, why is that still doing that? It's weird. Anyways, okay, that's the story, and that's my story, and I'm going to stop now because I don't know if this damn thing has been working. Anyways, that's Hart Trail. That's really my the love of my life. If it's my second home, let's put it like that. Okay, so you enjoy life. Go out there and find your observatory and just hang out and enjoy it. What's going on here? Why is this so fucking short? Just to give you some idea of what you have in this one small area. So in a day, you can actually traverse all of those, and you can go to all of their